I didn't expect my own son to shout at me like that. His voice cut through me like a knife, sharp and merciless. I was only brushing the dust off his car, just trying to make it look nice before he left for work. But instead of a thank you, I heard words that burned into my heart. "Don't you ever touch my car again." For a second, I froze. My hand was still on the shiny surface, my reflection staring back at me in the metal, trembling. The neighbors' curtains twitched. I could feel their eyes watching. Shame spread through me like fire, climbing up my chest, choking me. I turned toward him, my lips parting to say something, but nothing came out. My throat was dry. He slammed the car door and stood there glaring at me like I was nothing more than a stranger trespassing on his precious space. I wanted to cry right there, but instead I forced myself to stand straight. My knees were weak, my hands shaking, but I didn't move. Something inside me whispered, "Don't let this moment pass without truth." That's when I stepped closer, reached for the trunk, and pulled it open. My breath caught. I saw something inside that made the world tilt. My knees nearly gave out. But I kept staring, my mouth wide, my heart racing so fast I thought it might explode. I'll never forget that moment. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I stood frozen at the trunk, but before I explain what I saw, you need to understand something. This wasn't just about a car. This wasn't just about a shout. It was about years of sacrifice, years of silence, years of being treated like an invisible servant in my own home. His words weren't just an outburst. They were proof of what he had become and of how far I had fallen in his eyes. The pain of that moment cracked open a flood of memories. Remembered the long nights when he was still a boy, coughing with fever. I sat beside his bed, pressing a wet cloth on his forehead, whispering prayers, begging God to spare him. I remembered carrying him on my back when his shoes broke on the way to school because I couldn't afford new ones that month. I remembered pawning the last piece of jewelry my mother had given me, just so he could have books for college. And now this same boy, my boy, was standing in front of me, yelling about fingerprints on his car. "Why are you shouting at me?" I whispered, my voice trembling. He snapped back, "Because you don't listen. I told you, don't touch my things." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him if I was just some stranger in his house, but the words died in my chest. Instead, I let the silence hang heavy between us. Inside the trunk, my eyes locked on a shiny box. It was wrapped neatly, with a ribbon on top. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside was a necklace, pure gold, shining brighter than anything I had ever owned. For a moment I thought, maybe it was for me. Maybe, just maybe, he had remembered everything I gave up for him. But then his wife's name was written on the card. My daughter-in-law. My heart cracked. I stared at the necklace, the light bouncing off my tears. The world around me blurred. All I could hear was his voice again, angry, harsh, ungrateful. "Don't touch my car." I whispered, This is for her?" He looked away, shame flickering for only a second before his jaw tightened. "Yes. So what? It's my money, my gift. Don't interfere." Don't interfere. That phrase cut deeper than any insult. I was the mother who raised him, who gave up my own happiness for him, and now I was being told I had no right to even touch the car I partly paid for. No right to question the necklace, no right to ask about his choices. I was no longer his guide, his safe place, his mother. I was just in the way. The ground beneath me felt unsteady. My chest ached. I wanted to remind him of everything. I wanted to shout, "This life you're living was built on my back." But the words refused to leave my lips. Instead, I whispered, "I don't recognize you anymore." He didn't answer. He just closed the trunk with a loud slam, brushed past me, and drove away. The sound of the engine faded down the street, but the echo of his shout stayed in my ears. I walked back into the house like a ghost. The walls looked the same, the furniture was in its place, but everything inside me had changed. I sat down slowly, my body heavy as stone, and the tears I had held back came rushing down. I thought about the years I had scrubbed floors until my hands bled, just so he could have clean clothes and a full stomach. I thought about the insults I swallowed from relatives who mocked me for being poor. They said I was foolish to spend every coin on his education. "He will forget you one day," they said. And now I knew they were right. The pain was unbearable. But underneath it, a small flame of anger began to burn. Because this wasn't just about me. It was about every mother who gave her life for her children, only to be treated like a burden. It was about every sacrifice that went unseen, every tear that went unnoticed, every sleepless night that went unthanked. I couldn't erase his shout. I couldn't erase the image of that necklace meant for someone else, but I could decide what to do next. That night, I sat on my bed staring at the ceiling. His words echoed in my mind again and again. "Don't touch my car," over and over, until it no longer felt like words but like chains locking me into silence. I closed my eyes, and for the first time, I asked myself a question I had never dared to think before. What if I stopped being silent? The thought scared me. It also gave me strength. When I opened my eyes, the tears had dried. The pain was still there, sharp and deep, but now it carried something else, a resolve I had never felt before. I knew this was only the beginning. I couldn't sleep that night. My eyes stayed wide open, staring at the ceiling as my son's shout echoed in my head. "Don't touch my car." Those words weren't just about a car. They were about my place in his life, about how far I had fallen in his eyes. The slam of the trunk and the necklace for his wife were still burning in my memory. I kept asking myself one question. How did we get here? How did the boy I raised with my own hands grow into a man who treats me like a burden? And then, as the silence of the night wrapped around me, the memories came rushing back, one after another, like waves crashing against the shore. Memories of sacrifices I buried so deep that even I sometimes forgot them. I remembered the first time I held him in my arms, his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I promised I would give him everything, no matter the cost. At that time, I had nothing. Not money, not support, only determination. But that determination was enough. When he was 5, his father lost his job. The house turned cold, and the kitchen shelves were empty. My son asked for milk one night, and I had none to give. That night, I walked to the neighbor's house, knocked on the door, and begged for a cup. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself better days were coming. "Just one night," I whispered to him as he sipped the warm milk, unaware of the shame burning in my chest. Better days never came. I started sewing clothes for the women in our neighborhood. My fingers bled from pushing the needle through thick fabric, but I never complained. Every coin I earned went into his school fees. Sometimes I skipped meals just so he would never feel the hunger that gnawed at my own stomach. One day, my mother-in-law looked me in the eye and said, "You're wasting your time. Boys grow up and forget their mothers. You'll see." I smiled politely, but inside, her words pierced me. I refused to believe it. Not my son. He's different. He'll never forget me. I was wrong. When he turned 10, he wanted new shoes for school. His old ones had holes, and he said the kids laughed at him. I had no money. That evening, I pawned the last piece of gold my mother had given me before she died. A thin chain, all I had left of her. The shopkeeper weighed it in his hand, gave me a few bills, and I walked out with tears in my eyes. That night, my son's smile when he wore those shoes made the pain disappear. But now, years later, I realized he didn't even remember. "Do you know what I gave up for you?" I whispered to myself in the darkness. The room answered only with silence. When he went to college, the bills doubled. His father had given up by then, leaving everything on me. I worked double shifts, cleaned other people's homes, and returned with aching bones. But I told myself it was worth it. I told myself I was building his future. Sometimes, when I handed him money for books, I would say, "Study hard, make me proud." He always nodded, distracted, already planning his next outing with friends. I thought he was just young, careless. I believed maturity would bring gratitude, but gratitude never came. One evening, I came home exhausted. My back hurt, and my hands were raw from scrubbing floors. I opened the door to find him sitting with his friends, laughing, eating snacks I didn't even know he had bought. He glanced at me and said, "Mom, can you bring us some tea?" No, thank you. No concern for how tired I looked. Just an order. I made the tea. I told myself it was just a phase, but deep down, I felt something breaking. "Why do you always push yourself so much?" a neighbor once asked me. I smiled. "Because he deserves the best." But now, I wonder, did he deserve my sacrifices, or did I give too much? Without teaching him the value of it? The memories piled up, heavy and sharp. I remembered nights when I mended his torn school bag with thread while he slept. I remembered birthdays when I couldn't afford a cake, so I cooked his favorite meal instead, pretending it was all he wanted. I remembered the insults I endured from relatives who mocked me for being poor. They said, "You're raising him to fly, but he'll never look back at the nest." And still, I smiled. Still, I believed. Still, I sacrificed. Now, lying awake in my bed, I realized those sacrifices were buried not just in the past, but in his heart. He never saw them. He never valued them. To him, they were invisible. The next morning, I tried to talk to him. He was leaving for work, his keys in hand. I stood by the door, my voice shaking. "Do you remember the shoes I bought you when you were 10? Do you remember the nights I stayed awake with you when you were sick?" He frowned, annoyed. "Mom, why are you bringing this up? That was years ago." "Because those years were my life," I said softly. He rolled his eyes. "Please stop living in the past. I'm not a kid anymore." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him and make him see the truth. But instead, I swallowed my words. My throat burned with unshed tears. As he walked away, I realized something. Maybe my mother-in-law had been right. Maybe mothers do bury their sacrifices in silence, and sons forget. But another thought followed, sharper and more painful. Or maybe I raised the wrong son. The words echoed in my head, heavy and cruel. Could it be true? Could I have given everything to someone who would never give anything back? The rest of the day, I walked through the house like a shadow. Every corner held a memory of sacrifice. The kitchen reminded me of nights I cooked small meals, stretching them so he would never go hungry. The living room reminded me of the times I stayed awake waiting for him to come home safe. The bedroom reminded me of the gold chain I gave up for his shoes. Everywhere I looked, I saw pieces of myself. Pieces I had given away for him. Pieces he had never acknowledged. That night, as I sat alone, I whispered to myself, was it worth it? Was it worth giving up everything for a son who now shouts at me over a car? The silence in the room was deafening. I closed my eyes, and once again, his words echoed, "Don't touch my car." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. My heart screamed, "This cannot go on." I thought the shouting had ended with last night's fight. But silence in a house like ours was always dangerous. It meant something was brewing. My heart was heavy as I entered the room I had avoided for months, the old storage room tucked in the corner of the house. Dust layered the furniture, cobwebs dangled from the ceiling, and in the middle sat the thing I feared most, my husband's wooden trunk. That trunk had been locked since the day he died. Nobody touched it, nobody even mentioned it, but lately, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything, the lies, the fights, the way my son turned against me, was somehow connected to what was inside. I held the small iron key in my hand, my fingers trembling. My husband had given it to me years ago with a warning I never understood. Only open it when you have no one left to trust. Back then, I laughed. I thought it was his way of being dramatic. But now, standing in that dusty room, I realized he had known something I didn't. My breath grew shallow as I slid the key into the lock. The click echoed in the silence. The trunk creaked open, and a smell of old paper and cedar wood filled the air. At first, I saw nothing unusual, just clothes, faded photos, and a few letters. But as I dug deeper, my hand brushed against a sealed envelope with my name written in his handwriting. My stomach twisted. With shaking hands, I tore it open. Inside was a confession. My husband. had written about a truth he had hidden from me for decades. The words burned through my eyes. The boy you raised is not the son we thought he was. I froze. My knees nearly gave out. What did he mean? Which boy? My son, the one who had turned cold against me, the one who now treated me like an enemy? I pressed the paper to my chest, tears blurring the ink. My husband's voice echoed in my memory, his constant warnings, his restless nights, his distance in the last years of his life. He hadn't been sick from age, he had been sick from secrets. As I kept reading, I learned the truth. The trunk held more than letters. It held proof. Birth papers, hidden records, and an old photograph of a woman I had never seen before, holding a child who looked exactly like my son. I whispered to myself, "No, this can't be real." But deep down, I knew it was. That's when the door behind me creaked open. My son's voice cut through the silence. "What are you doing in here?" I quickly shoved the papers back into the trunk, but he had already seen the envelope in my hand. His eyes narrowed. "Give me that," he snapped, stepping closer. I held the letter to my chest. "Why didn't you tell me? Did you already know?" His face hardened. "It doesn't matter what I know. That trunk doesn't belong to you anymore." I stared at him, heart racing. "Your father left it for me. This truth belongs to me." For a moment, I thought he might snatch it away, but instead he laughed, cold, bitter. "You always thought you understood him. You didn't. He left this world hiding everything from you." Anger rose in me, stronger than fear. "And from you, too. He wanted me to know when the time was right. He wanted me to face the truth." My son's jaw tightened, his eyes burning. "Stop calling me your son if you don't even know who I am." Those words cut deeper than any knife. My hands trembled, and the paper slipped to the floor. I bent to pick it up, but he stepped on it. His voice was sharp. "You think knowing the truth will save you? It won't. It will destroy you." I looked up at him, tears spilling down my face. "The truth can never destroy me more than your betrayal already has." He froze for a second, as if my words had struck him, but then he turned and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I stayed on the floor, clutching the letter, shaking. The trunk was no longer just a box of old memories. It was the battlefield where my life had shattered. That night, I couldn't sleep. The words repeated in my head. "The boy you raised is not the son we thought he was." I thought about the sacrifices I had made, the years of hunger so he could eat, the nights I worked my hands raw to buy his books, the endless prayers whispered into the dark, all for a boy who now looked me in the eye and said, "Stop calling me your son." But then I realized something. Whether by blood or not, I had been the one who raised him. I had given him my love, my youth, my life. If he wasn't mine, then whose was he? And why had my husband hidden this from me for so long? The next morning, I returned to the trunk. This time, I emptied it completely. At the bottom, beneath old blankets, I found a locked metal box. It was heavier than I expected. Using the same key, I opened it, and my heart nearly stopped. Inside were stacks of letters written by my husband to another woman, letters of love, guilt, and promises. He had been living a double life, and my son, was proof of it. I whispered, "So this is the truth you left me with." But something else was in the box, an old audio cassette. On it was written, "For her, when she finds out." My hands shook as I placed it in the old player we still had in the house. The tape crackled, and then I heard his voice, my husband's voice, speaking to me from beyond the grave. "If you're listening to this, it means you've opened the trunk. I'm sorry, I never wanted you to find out like this. But the boy you call your son, he is not yours by blood. I failed you. I failed both of you. I was weak. But please don't punish him for my sins. He is innocent." I covered my mouth, sobbing. His words were both a dagger and a plea. But then the voice continued, "There is more you don't know. Someone in this family knew all along. Someone you trusted. Be careful." The tape ended. Silence filled the room, heavier than before. I sat frozen, staring at the machine. Someone in my family had known. Someone had watched me live a lie, suffer in confusion, beg for my son's love, and never told me the truth. The walls of the house seemed to close in on me. Which face should I stop trusting? Who had been watching me like a fool all these years? When I stepped out of the room, I saw my daughter-in-law standing at the end of the hallway. She looked calm, too calm, as if she already knew what I had just discovered. Her eyes met mine, and she smiled faintly. "So, you finally opened it." The floor beneath me seemed to vanish. My breath caught in my throat. "You knew," I whispered. Her smile widened, sharp as a blade. "Of course I knew. Why do you think he changed after marrying me? Why do you think he listens to me now, not you?" "Because I told him the truth the day we married, and I reminded him every day who you really are to him, a stranger." My chest burned. I staggered back against the wall. You destroyed us," I said, my voice breaking. She tilted her head. "No, your husband destroyed you. I just gave your son the truth he deserved." Her words echoed like thunder. I realized the real betrayal wasn't just hidden in the trunk. It was alive, walking through the halls of my home, wearing the face of my daughter-in-law. I wanted to scream, to fight, to tear down every lie, but my voice came out as a whisper. "You've taken him from me." She leaned closer, her smile cruel. "And no, he was never yours to begin with." And just like that, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the ruins of my life. But as my tears fell, something inside me hardened. I knew the truth now, and the truth had power. My husband was gone, my son had turned, my daughter-in-law had revealed her game, but I was still standing. And I promised myself, right there in that hallway, that I would not stay silent. Because if the trunk had secrets, so did I. And mine were about to come out. The words of my daughter-in-law still rang in my ears. "He was never yours to begin with." I couldn't shake them off, no matter how hard I tried. That night, I tossed and turned, my mind burning with anger, grief, and betrayal. My body was weak, but my heart beat with a strength I had never felt before. By morning, I had made a decision. Enough of being silent. Enough of letting them control me. If they thought they had broken me, they were wrong. I was going to confront them, and this time, I would not hold back. I walked into the living room, where my son and his wife sat together, sipping tea as if nothing had happened. My son didn't even look at me, but my daughter-in-law's smirk told me she was waiting for me to speak. My voice cracked at first, but I steadied it. "I know the truth now. The trunk told me everything." My son's eyes flickered, but he quickly looked away. My daughter-in-law leaned back in her chair. "And what will you do with that truth?" she asked coldly. I stepped closer, gripping the letter in my hand. "I raised you with love," I said to my son, "and this is how you repay me? By spitting in my face, by calling me a stranger?" He finally looked at me, and his voice was sharp. "You are a stranger. My real mother died years ago. You just played her role." The room spun. My knees shook, but I forced myself to stay standing. "I was there for every sickness, every fall, every tear," I whispered. "I am the one who sacrificed everything for you. No letter, no bloodline can erase that." His wife laughed, a cruel sound that cut through the room. "He doesn't need your sacrifices anymore. He has me. He has the truth. That's all that matters now." I turned to her, my anger rising. "You knew. You poisoned him against me. You stole him from me." Her eyes glittered with victory. "I didn't steal him. I simply reminded him of what he already knew in his heart, that you were never his." For a moment, silence filled the room. My son shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't defend me. He didn't defend the woman who had given him her life. That was when I felt something inside me snap. I slammed the letter on the table. "Fine. If you want to erase me, go ahead. But remember this. You may share blood, but I shared my soul. And when the day comes that you realize what you've lost, it will be too late. My son stood, his fists clenched. Stop trying to guilt me. You're not my mother. Accept it. Tears welled in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I may not be your mother by blood, I said, my voice steady, but I will always be the woman who raised you. Nothing you say can change that. He turned away, his shoulders tense, and walked out of the room. His wife followed, but not before giving me one last cruel smile. When the door shut, I collapsed into the chair, my body trembling. My breaking point had come, not because I was weak, but because I had finally stopped pretending. The rest of the day, I sat in silence, clutching the trunk's letters, replaying the cassette over and over. My husband's voice haunted me. Someone in this family knew all along. I couldn't stop thinking. Was it only my daughter-in-law? Or was there someone else, someone even closer, who had betrayed me? That night, my younger daughter came into my room. She looked worried, her eyes red from crying. "Mother," she whispered, "I heard everything. Is it true?" I hesitated, but then nodded. "Yes, it's true. The man you call your brother is not my son." She sat beside me, tears rolling down her cheeks. How could Father hide this from us? How could he let us live a lie? I stroked her hair, though my hands were shaking. Because he was weak. Because he couldn't face the truth himself. She looked at me, her voice trembling. "But what about us? What will happen to this family now?" I had no answer. All I could do was hold her and let her cry. The next morning, my daughter-in-law stormed into my room, her voice sharp. "Stop filling everyone's head with lies. If you don't keep quiet, I will throw you out of this house." I stood tall, my pain burning into strength. This house was built on my sacrifices. If anyone leaves, it won't be me. Her smile faltered, just for a second, but then she sneered. "We'll see who wins, old woman. Blood always wins over strangers." As she walked out, I realized this wasn't just about my son anymore. This was war. A war for truth, a war for my dignity, a war for the family I had held together all my life. And I wasn't going to lose. The air in the house was heavy after my son walked away from me, calling me a stranger. But I knew silence wouldn't save me anymore. I had swallowed my pain for too long, and now it was poisoning me. That night, I sat alone, staring at the old trunk that had torn my world apart. The letters, the cassette, the truth, they were all weapons now. Weapons I never wanted, but ones I had no choice but to use. By morning, I gathered my strength. My body felt weak, but my spirit had hardened. I told myself, this ends today. I walked into the living room, where my son and his wife sat again. Their laughter stopped when they saw me. My son looked uneasy, but she smiled, as if mocking me. I didn't waste time. "You call me a stranger," I said, my voice trembling but sharp. "Then let's face the truth together, in front of everyone." My son frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean a family meeting," I replied, "right now." Within the hour, the family gathered. My daughter, my son, his wife, and even neighbors who had come to see the commotion. It felt like a courtroom, and I was both the accused and the witness. I placed the trunk in the middle. "This," I said, pointing at it, "holds the secrets your father kept from me, and from you." My daughter-in-law folded her arms. "Stop this drama. You're embarrassing yourself." I ignored her. I pulled out the letter, unfolded it with shaking hands, and began to read aloud. The words hit like thunder, a confession of a hidden child, a mistake that turned into a lifetime of deception. Gasps filled the room. My daughter covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. But my son, he looked away, his jaw tight. When I finished reading, I looked straight at him. "This is the truth you wanted. Now tell me, does this erase everything I did for you?" For a moment, silence. Then he exploded. "You lied to me all my life." My heart cracked. I didn't know. I was kept in the dark, just like you. He shook his head. You should have told me the moment you found out. I stepped forward, tears running down my face. I found out only days ago, and still I stand here fighting for you, because no matter what, you are my son in every way that matters. My daughter-in-law cut in, her voice sharp. Enough. Blood doesn't lie. He doesn't owe you anything. I turned to her, my anger boiling. You think blood makes a family? Then tell me, where were you when he was sick as a child? When he needed school fees? When he cried in the night, afraid of the dark? Where were you? She sneered. I didn't need to be there. His real mother should have been. Her words hit me like knives. But I refused to fall. I straightened my back and faced my son. Look into my eyes, I said. Do you see a liar? Or do you see the woman who raised you, who sacrificed her dreams so you could have yours? His lips trembled, but his wife grabbed his arm. Don't let her manipulate you, she hissed. That was when my daughter stepped forward. Enough, she cried. I've watched Mother suffer every day, giving up everything for us, and you dare call her a stranger? My son looked torn, his eyes darting between his sister and his wife. But then he hardened again. She's not my real mother, he muttered. The words broke something inside me, but also lit a fire. I turned to the crowd, to everyone watching. You all see me as a mother, a wife, a woman who gave her life for this family, and now you see how I am repaid, not with gratitude, but with betrayal. The neighbors murmured. Some nodded, some looked away. The truth was spreading, and my daughter-in-law's smile began to fade. I took the cassette, placed it in the player, and pressed play. My husband's voice filled the room. If you're hearing this, it means I never had the courage to tell you. The child we raised together was never yours by blood, but you are his true mother in every way that matters. The room fell silent. Tears streamed down my face, but I stood tall. Even from the grave, my husband had given me the truth I needed. I faced my son. Do you hear him? Even your father admits I am your true mother. He looked shaken, but his wife quickly whispered in his ear. He clenched his fists. It doesn't change how I feel. You're not her. I felt my body sway, my chest heavy with pain, but I steadied myself. This is my breaking point, I said softly. I will no longer beg for love that should be mine. If you choose her lies over my truth, then so be it. I turned to walk away, but my daughter-in-law shouted after me, You'll regret this. We'll make sure you're thrown out. I stopped at the door, turned back, and met her eyes. No, the only ones who will regret this are those who traded love for pride and truth for lies. I left the room, my tears finally falling. But inside, a new strength was born. I had faced them. I had spoken the truth. Matt. And though my son still rejected me, I knew the war was far from over. The confrontation had only just begun. The door slammed behind me after the confrontation. I stood outside, trembling, my chest rising and falling as if I had run a marathon. But it wasn't running that exhausted me. It was years of swallowing insults, years of keeping quiet, years of trying to prove myself to people who never wanted to see me. I thought of my son's eyes, cold and distant, as he called me a stranger. That memory pressed on my chest like a stone. But for the first time, instead of breaking me, it lit something inside me. I whispered to myself, I am done begging. I walked back into the house, not for their approval, not for their love, but for my own dignity. My daughter followed me, wiping tears from her face. Mother, she whispered, please don't let them hurt you anymore. I touched her hand. No, my child. Today is the last day anyone uses my silence against me. The room was still heavy with tension when I returned. Everyone turned, surprised to see me come back instead of retreat. My daughter-in-law smirked. Couldn't stay away, could you? Drama suits you. I raised my chin. No, dignity suits me, and that's what I came to reclaim. I walked straight to the center, my voice steady. I've carried this family on my back. I worked until my hands bled. I sacrificed every dream I had so my children could have theirs. And now, after one truth, a truth I didn't even create, I'm cast aside like garbage. My words made some neighbors lower their eyes in shame, but my son crossed his arms. Stop playing the victim. I looked at him, my heart aching. Victim? No. Survivor. Fighter. Mother. His wife sneered. If you had any pride, you'd leave quietly. I turned to her slowly. If you had any humanity, you'd respect the woman who built the life you're now enjoying. She laughed bitterly. Respect is earned. I stepped closer, my voice sharp. Then look at me closely. Look at the years on my face, the scars on my hands, the sleepless nights I gave. Tell me I didn't earn respect. The room fell silent. Even she couldn't meet my eyes. But my son still stood firm. You think words will change how I feel? I shook my head. No. Words don't change hearts. Truth does. And the truth is, I am your mother, not by blood, but by every act of love, every sacrifice, every tear. His face twisted, torn between anger and doubt. My daughter stepped forward again. Brother, listen to her. She carried us both. Don't let pride blind you. But he pulled away, muttering, I don't know what to believe anymore. I sighed, feeling the last thread between us slipping. I won't force you, I said quietly. But from this moment, I choose myself. If my own son refuses to see my worth, then I will not live as a shadow in his house. I turned to the crowd. You all came to watch. Remember what you saw. A woman who was called a stranger in her own home, yet stood tall. A woman stripped of everything, yet still unbroken. I picked up the trunk, the cursed box of secrets, and held it tightly. This was supposed to bury me. Instead, it freed me, because now I know I don't need anyone's permission to stand with dignity. My daughter's hand gripped mine. Mother, let's leave. You don't deserve this cruelty. My son took a step forward, his voice low. If you walk out now, don't expect to come back. I froze. His words pierced deeper than any knife, but I lifted my head high. No, if I walk out now, it means I finally came back to myself. I turned to the door, each step heavy but strong. Behind me, my daughter-in-law hissed, She's bluffing. She'll come crawling back. I stopped, glanced over my shoulder and said, I don't crawl anymore. I rise. And I walked out. The days after were not easy. I stayed with my daughter in her small apartment. I had nothing but a few clothes and the trunk, but for the first time in years, the silence in my life wasn't filled with fear. It was filled with peace. People whispered about what happened. Some judged me. Some pitied me. But none of it mattered, because every morning when I woke up, I felt lighter. I took small steps, cooking meals I enjoyed, walking in the park, even laughing again. My daughter sat with me one night and said, Mother, you're glowing. I've never seen you this free. I smiled through tears, because I finally remembered who I am. But the story wasn't over. One evening, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, my son stood there. His eyes were red, his shoulders heavy. Mother, he whispered, can we talk? I let him in. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he dropped to his knees, his voice breaking. I was wrong. I let anger blind me. I hurt you. Tears filled my eyes, but I held back. You broke me, my son. Do you know how it feels to be called a stranger by the child you raised? He sobbed. I thought blood was everything, but after you left, I realized love is stronger, and you gave me nothing but love. I placed my hand on his head. You chose pride over me. Don't do it again. He clutched my hand. I won't. Please, forgive me. My heart cracked open, but this time it wasn't pain. It was release. I pulled him close, holding him like I did when he was a boy. You are mine, I whispered. Not because of blood, because of love. Behind him, my daughter wiped her tears, smiling. In that moment, I felt my dignity return. Not because he came back, but because I never gave up on myself. And so, my story ends here. Not as a woman broken by betrayal, but as a woman who rose from it. I lost much, but I gained myself back. If you are listening, remember this. Family is not same blood. Family is sacrifice. Family is love. And dignity is never given. It is claimed. So I stand here today, stronger than ever, telling you, I am no longer a stranger in my own story. I am the author of it. What would you do if you were in my place? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories.